Pledge of Allegiance. Mrs. Aroli, will you do the honors?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excellent. And we have our slightly amended agenda, and I believe we have the first Avon Achiever is regarding Josie Jordan, and who is doing the honors?
Honored to have that honor. Thank you, Houston. So I won't start with a joke, but there's a joke in the field of education that probably you've all heard that talks about whenever you get into a new role or a new building, meet the two most important people. That's the way the joke goes. Right, those two most important people are the secretary and the custodian.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if there's a grain of truth in there, maybe there is, but the joke always bothered me a little bit because that implies that there's a big hierarchy in terms of influence. I think the best schools out there do not have that. It's not the size of the office, where you park, or any of those kinds of things. The best schools out there, every single person is exceptionally important. So I'm very honored to honor Josie Jordan. Come up and join me. Reluctantly right now. Thank you. Josie is one of our paraeducators who works with a large number of students in the building over many years. And she is somebody who has passion, warmth, talent, and commitment to the students that she works with that is absolutely incredible. And I love watching you interacting with our kids every day with the warmth and care that you truly demonstrate. You are a treat, and on behalf of all of our BS, we are really honored to call you an Avon Achiever. So thank you.
Thank you.
Very much. Our second one, I'm going to have our assistant principal, Larry Sparks, join us up here. Should we be over here? Sure.
It means we can get on camera.
Okay. Hi. Good evening, everybody. My congrats to Josie as well. 10 years working side by side with her. She's an amazing person. And in keeping with Noam's theme of a kind of a flat organization and how everybody has a key role, I'd like to bring up Keith Archer, custodian. Somewhere. So Webster's defines a custodian as someone who is responsible for things and takes care. And we know Keith to be impeccable in both of those departments. First and foremost, he is also recognized as a Renaissance man. He can take any problem that we present to him, whether it's maintenance, electrical, plumbing, something, and turn it around and make it a quick solution and fix the problem. He's a ton of fun. Every day that he comes to work, he has a positive attitude. So his positive attitude is contagious. He works hard, and he's willing to do whatever it takes to get the job done. And really, the best thing about Keith is he has a clear understanding of the path between his work and the final outcome. And the final outcome really is we're delivering 5th grade ready kids who have a complete background and ready academically, ready socially, ready emotionally, and he helps set the stage for that every day in his interaction with the teachers, with the students, with parents. It's just a delight to have Keith on the staff, and we appreciate you so much for what you do. 2 quick stories. Last year, for Fire Prevention Week, Keith is a captain in a local volunteer fire department. So he came in with full dress and was on his hands and knees with our 3- and 4-year-olds helping to explain what it's like to be a firefighter. And the kids were over the moon excited. A real fireman got to try on his helmet, see his uniform. So that's phenomenal. Another recent puzzle we just had to solve was I was frustrated at recess and there was a piece of equipment that wasn't working so well. I gave a vague description to Keith. He was down in about 1 minute. It's a half a mile from the loading dock to our recess area, roughly speaking. And he had the problem fixed immediately. And he had the right tool and the right attitude. So for getting the job done, for making our school a great place to be, congratulations, Keith, Avon Achiever.
Thank you. And in keeping with our tradition, if anyone would like to leave now, We will pause for a moment to give you a chance to do that. If no one wants to leave, we will continue on. Next item is approval of minutes. Board of Education regular meeting, September 19, and that's it. The rest are approved by committee. May I have a motion?
So moved.
All right, Mrs. Rowell moves. Who seconds?
Second.
All right, Mrs. Blea seconds. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carries unanimously. Excellent. Communications from the public. Does anyone like to address us on any topic? All right. Seeing no one, going once, going twice. All right, on to the next item. Items of information and proposals. Mr. Arardi, would you like to come up and talk to us about how we're doing on the superintendent search?
Thank you, Mr. Lowry. I'd like to start, if I could, with your two student reps, Amir and Heather, who attended the student meeting for Voice last week. They did an outstanding job. Mr. Pelling assembled a cross-section of Avon High School students, and I thank him publicly for doing that. And I thought we had a terrific conversation. But they're prepared to tell you their executive summary of our meeting and your next superintendent.
Okay.
All right, so we were asked really what we were looking for in a superintendent, what we thought his job should be, what his involvement with us should be. So there was an overall consensus that that whoever we hire should take it slow and really try and understand the whole Avon community as a whole first, instead of trying to implement something that they had used in another district, for example, first, and seeing how that goes, just being more aware of what's worked in Avon and what hasn't worked. And also the communication with students was a big thing that they talked about. We all really want someone who will seek our opinion and care about what we say and just really be involved with us in their decision making, especially if it directly affects us, which most everything does. So that's really the two main points I feel like they talked about. Is there anything else?
Mr. Johnson, anything you would like to add?
Yes. So also definitely student voice was something that was talked about, and I think I would doubly agree with Heather about that. And also someone who's going to be around, someone who's going to talk to students, be at events, not just be at events when it will benefit them, but be at events where students are going to be able to talk, interact, not just be there because they're the superintendent and it looks good if they're, doing something, but if they're there actually interacting with the students, having fun, and, not there for business or anything like that. So that was something that definitely was talked about.
Heather and Amir, thank you so much. I thought the seniors in attendance were very tactical, so they said it a whole bunch of different ways, that they're hoping their new superintendent will watch at least until their senior year is over before any changes take place. And you can interpret that any way you would like to. We have had 18 focus meetings. We've met with every school faculty. We've met with every school parent organization. I was very interested to find the end of last night. I thought last evening I'd be sitting with my computer and doing some work. Last evening was the open hour. That was a drop-in with a one-on-one conversation. 7 to 8, I arrived about 6:45. There were folks waiting for me, and at 8:30 the line had ended, which I thought was very, very interesting. Thank you to the board members who have gone out of their way to support this search. It's really been appreciated. Thank you to the chair who has everybody on board. Those that are running for the Board of Education have all been notified that November 8th there is a special school board meeting, and they've also been given the dates of November 14th, the 15th, and the 18th are the dates that we've put together for our first round of interviews. The last two meetings, one is tomorrow morning with the department, the instructional leaders at Avon High School, and then next Monday is our last focus meeting. That will be a repeat of what we did last evening. That will bring to close 20 meetings within the community. I believe the community feels that their voice has been heard, and it's an important piece to the work. Well over 100 surveys have been already tabulated. From the applicant perspective, I continue to be pleased, and I look forward to November 1st when the deadline comes forward and we begin to put packages together. I will have for you the community profile on November 8th. I will have suggested questions that you may consider for the interview, and I will bring to you what the candidates that I feel would best serve Avon Public Schools. You will have, as a school board, the opportunity to look at all of the applicants. So from a perspective of 2 weeks out, I am pleased with the work that has taken place. And the last comment is the cooperation has come from Dr. Pattyfoot's central office and particularly from your site level administrators who have gone out of their way to support the search, to give me quality time, and to give me their faculty and their parents. Questions or thoughts or comments?
Mrs. Shute?
I want to thank you for all the work you've put in. I know it's taken a lot of time, and I was in attendance with Jason and Jackie and Kathy as well at some of those community sessions, and it was helpful for us to hear what people are thinking. I would like to send out another reminder to the community about that survey just to make sure that we've done our due diligence on that since it's still open.
Sure.
So it can go to parents, obviously, but community members who don't have students in the schools, I think that would be helpful.
Yesterday or
I did get
today?
Oh, you did get one?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yesterday,
I didn't. So, all right, excellent. That's good.
And the survey stays live. It's on the town site and the school site. The school board members who attended, they had a really hard task, where to sit and to listen and not to comment is a really difficult thing to do, and just publicly to acknowledge they did it really well.
We behaved.
You behaved.
Excellent.
It was really hard.
Um,
It was.
Could I ask if you have an idea how large the current pool is approximately?
It's really hard to say that
That's all right.
I know that whenever you say a number publicly, you own it for the rest of your video life. I will say the pool will be significantly larger than your last pool, which I believe was 12.
I think it was probably in that range. All right, good, excellent. Any further questions? Excellent. Thank you very much.
Yes,
We
thank you.
appreciate you keeping us informed.
Thank you.
And you'll be pleased to know I've approved the agenda for the November 8th meeting. So that will be posted in due course. All right, next item on the agenda is the student representative reports. Ms. Monroe, Mr. Johnson, further items to add?
Spirit Week in the high school is next week, starting on Monday, and the pep rally is on Friday. And the PSAT was taken by juniors and sophomores last Wednesday, which was October 11th. And the blood drive is next Wednesday on the 25th.
So at the school, we're going to have a turkey trot on November 8th through the 15th. The school dance will be December 8th, and Veterans Day Assembly will be November 13th.
Thank you. Okay, financial report. Mrs. Marshad.
The financial report is very similar to what you would have looked at last year, fiscal year to date. I just wanted to bring one major difference that I brought up with the finance subcommittee. Last fiscal year, this time, we were looking at 7.0 FTE additional unbudgeted positions, totaling about $357,000 of funds that we needed to mitigate. This year, we had a total of just 2 FTE, totaling about $103,000. So that was a little bit different from year to year. I just wanted to remind the board that transportation has not yet been paid. We just received the invoice, so we're reconciling that invoice. We'll make the first payment in the next week or so. Health insurance will be journaled the first time in January, and as you know, that runs through our payroll so that we accumulate those funds. And then finally, pending the outcome of 3 bargaining unit negotiations, we may see a bit of a shift in that salary line, but not too much.
All right. Questions for Mrs. Michaud? No questions. Thank you very much. October hiring report. Mrs. Pattyfoot.
Mrs. Michaud has one more thing to add.
Oh,
May I?
sure.
It's a little outside the norm, but I thought it was important to inform the board. The interim superintendent and myself had a discussion with the town manager and the director of finance last Friday, and it was concerning sort of our state woes and uncertainty, and just how the town was going about trying to think forward and mitigate the situation a bit. And we said that we would bring it to your attention as well, just so we can kind of keep it in the back of our heads that there really is quite a bit of uncertainty, and there may be an impact on Avon that's more than we had bargained for. So, quick recap. Whispers from various sources, including colleagues of from the business management side, are looking at possibly May before the state has a budget passed.
May?
May. So just keep that in the back of your head. The town at this point has implemented a soft freeze, so they're reviewing various transactions that are coming through. This is because the current estimate that the town manager is looking at a potential variation in revenue from various state sources is about 1.4 million. So we're just being cautious about that. Another item that we talked about in just worst case scenario, I would say, was the town manager was reviewing most of the open capital projects. And as you know, the Board of Education has 2 of the biggest open capital projects that are sort of on hold at this point. So the discussion sort of surrounded the potential of looking at those funds if the time arose to utilize them to sort of offset this burden. So that would be the science labs and then the AHS boiler. We did say that clearly we will do our due diligence on this side, of course, but we wanted to keep the board informed of the discussion.
Couple of questions for you, if I might. Are we looking for any reduction in funds in our budget from the state side?
The only concern that I have is our liability with the city of Hartford for additional special education related services over and above that tuition. So we budgeted over $400,000 for that. And because the city of Hartford has quite a large burden on it itself, the potential of that being an outstanding item is large.
I assume we're rendering only net bills to the city of Hartford?
We are rendering bills because we really don't have any other transactions this year other than them paying us. At least the Patterson Pond rent. The $2,000 we had to give them for them to open the ponds.
Oh, so we couldn't even do it net.
Sorry.
All right.
Otherwise, I would have handled it for you.
Thank you. All right. Anything else? I understand, like special ed reimbursement. Technically, that goes to the town and not us. So if it's not paid, obviously that will probably have an impact on next year's budget when that number trickles down to us, because eventually it gets baked into what they give us. But it sounds as though the biggest risk is the bankruptcy risk for the capital.
For us, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. Other questions?
Was there any discussion around the 2.5% cap?
Not one piece of mentioning of the 2.5% cap, though I will say we are still in compliance.
Do you guys feel like you're prepared to put forth an operating budget that would sustain a hit?
It's a little too early.
Premature.
Yeah, it's premature. I don't know yet. We don't know.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Burke?
Please.
No? All right. Thank you very much. Now we go to the October hiring
Yes,
report.
now we go to it. So this is the hiring report for October in their budgeted positions, 2 resignations and 1 retirement.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I believe you're going to do next the October enrollment report.
Yes, and as you can see from projection to present, we're down and we're right on target for what was anticipated this year, 3,210 students. So that's pretty good projection.
It's unheard of to be right on point.
Let's hope it stays that way.
Okay, next item is consent calendar. I understand there's been a request to pull all the field trips.
Houston,
Yes.
so I will let you finish your suggestions for pulling certain things off, but I want to make sure that a couple of things that I want pulled off get included as well.
Tell me what you want to pull.
172000 technology group, no, wrong list.
I'm sorry?
Sorry, wrong list. I know. 2580, is that the right number? Object 110, 01825.
Are you talking about a specific budget transfer item which is already under new business, I believe?
Yep,
No, it's not on consent.
Right, it's not on
it
consent.
was taken off the consent on the new
Yeah,
agenda?
It
Yes.
never was on.
Okay, it was on.
So at the moment, I'm looking at pulling C, D, E. Anything else? Because there are other budget transfers that would be approved. Okay, so may I have a motion to approve letter A, letter B, letter F?
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Mr. Zaroli, Mrs. Zaroli moves, and who seconded?
Wait, did you say letter F?
F is still on, correct.
This is what was added to the new agenda that was on our table.
Okay.
I don't know who was second.
I did.
Jay?
Mr. Spivak, okay, I missed it. All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carries unanimously. All right, so the standard is we pick things up immediately after the consent agenda that we've removed. So do you want to do C, D, and E as one item, or do you want to break them down as 3?
I had asked for them to be removed, and I'm happy to talk about them as a group.
Why don't you talk about them as a group? Go ahead.
The only reason I asked for them to be removed is because when I was preparing for the meeting, a couple of things struck me, and I felt like I should say them out loud as opposed to just have them rattling around in my head. So first off, I have no problem with these 3 field trips. I think they're a great idea. I support them. When you look at the agenda, the first thing that struck me was that we have a trip scheduled to Orlando, Fort Lauderdale, and overseas. So again, looking at it the first time, I said, boy, that seems like extravagant travel for the times we're living in. And then read the backup and realized, this is not something that's going to cost us as a district. So that was my first thought rolling around my head, and I just wanted to put it out there and make sure I was reading everything correctly. I don't have any kids in the high school, so I haven't had to incur these costs yet. But the other thing that occurred to me when I looked at the trips, and again, I support them. I'm gonna encourage that we keep them. But the times we're living in right now, are scary times. And you look at these locations: Orlando, overseas, Fort Lauderdale, high traffic areas. And I just think what came to my mind when I looked at it was that these are places where, unfortunately in today's day and age, there's some security risks. Now, I read our policies on field trips and overnight trips and the consent forms, and we've done an excellent job of spelling out all the risks, who assumes the risks, the changing times. We did a fantastic job at that, so I should probably compliment Kathy and the rest of the policy committee on that. But again, I totally support these trips. I think the fact that we live in these uncertain times should not stop us from doing these kinds of things, and shouldn't stop us from having the students in the district doing these kind of things. But I think as a group, we should just at least acknowledge that. And I know how I feel. I feel like we should still take these trips, still offer these opportunities, despite the circumstances in the country and the world. But there's 8 other members on this board who might feel differently. so I thought it was important for me to just bring it up. So with that said, I support the trips. I have no problem with them. I think in the end, it's great that we're offering these to the students, and it's up to the parents and the guardians and the responsible adults, along with the students, just to decide if they want to take these trips. So that's all I wanted to bring up. Otherwise, I have no issues with the trips, and I assume they're going to go forward. So that was it.
Mrs. Zaroli has a question.
I had submitted a couple of questions on these because I saw that the swim team field trip clearly indicates they have insurance, but I did not see if the AHS music or the AHS European trip had insurance.
If you don't mind, I'll answer that. As part of an implementation of tighter internal procedures, particularly to address Jason's comments about uncertain times, what I did was I went out and I made sure that the student accident insurance company that we are utilizing will underwrite individual student trips with our student accident insurance clause. Clearly, I would be more than happy to supply what we look for in that underwriting procedure, but that's why all the trips now come to me in my office first, because we send them out to be underwritten so that we're protecting our students and our chaperones as much as we possibly can. We cannot mandate that they buy trip insurance, but we can definitely insure these trips, and we do. It is a budgeted item. So every one of these trips that's going out of state and overseas, right, outside the domestic U.S., they're all underwritten with insurance policies.
Okay, all right. And then the only other thing was I was grateful that the field trip to Orlando was centered around a break time, because I've noticed a couple trips that we've been asked to do last minute, and they were at the middle school, were not during break, and I don't support field trips that are not during a break. Thank you.
One follow-up question for me for Mrs. Mashad. How much insurance do we carry? You knew that was coming.
I did. Because the cost can be very great depending on where it is, the underwriting, we have a sliding scale with the student accident insurance, which we're using Bollinger right now. So I'll send you an example of what it looks like for, we'll use Munich, for example.
Okay.
And it breaks down costs and things of that nature.
All right, so it's insurance that the district pays for.
We are paying for.
Okay. Thank you. Mrs. Blea?
I have a question, just hearing Jason talk, now I'm thinking like that. Do we ever, and I didn't read that policy, so I'm not fresh on what the policy says coming in here, but do we ever consult with security, or do we have any discussions about security before these trips happen? Or do we?
To my knowledge, we're not consulting with our in-district security.
Oh, well, that's new to having a district security per se.
I'm just asking in general. I have no...
I would assume if, and maybe it's a wrong assumption, that if the State Department has a travel advisory out that says don't go, I assume we'd probably notice that and say maybe we should change the location.
But all these policies are, or the policy and all these trips are contingent on the superintendent being able to cancel them up to the last minute if something changes.
That's what the policy says.
The policy specifically says that, and it says that in all the disclosures that the parents get.
Right.
So it's a parent. So it really is it's a parent thing, but then the board or through the superintendent maintains control till the kids leave.
Right. And as a practical matter, State Department will not issue a travel advisory within the United States. It'll only be foreign and overseas. Mrs. Young.
So we have graduated 2 students from our family, that is, from Avon High School. One went to Italy and one went to France, and I can say that those trips were both invaluable to their educational experience. And unfortunately, there have always been circumstances that change every year, but what I recall having to sign was a waiver that essentially said that we hold harmless the Avon Public Schools should any sort of incident happen that is beyond anyone's control. I would support the continuation of us being able to offer these kinds of opportunities as educational, trips for our students, and that whatever the State Department is advising obviously be taken into consideration, but I don't know how everybody else feels.
Okay.
I think they're valuable.
Do we have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the 3 trips, CD&E.
I second.
Mrs. Young seconds, Mrs. Rell moved. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? Carries unanimously. All right, next item is the budget transfer item, which I understand, who will be speaking to us on that?
I actually had 2 though. Do we pull them both off?
Well, I'll find out. I think it's probably Mrs. Mashad that's going to be
Yes.
addressing us.
After our finance subcommittee meeting, it was decided that this particular transfer, which happens every year, we do an annual salary variance transfer, essentially, to try and catch up any changes that were made since the budget was pieced together a year prior. There was some discussion about a few particular line items in here that were concerning to board members, so the reason why it's on new business is so that we can have a good discussion about that. But just so everyone is aware, I was asked to go back and really kind of cull through many of these line items and see if I could find the means to make this happen, right? Less one particular account. So if you don't mind, I'll present what I came out with, if that's okay. Okay.
Sure.
What I ended up looking at was, if you look at the family engagement line, which is, I believe, on page 49, third from the bottom. It's account number 01821101111. The budget for that particular account was $103,588. Originally, the transfer was requesting the full $103,588 to be borne into the rest of the transfer. I went back and I did some calculations based on what I thought I heard, which was potentially leaving enough funds in there to hire an FTE. Given that that hire wouldn't happen until, I guessed, January. At this point, that left 97 work days for that particular individual based on a per diem I estimated. So we would need $32,443.59 to leave in that particular line item to make something happen, if that makes sense. So what I did is I looked for $32,000 and change elsewhere, and it turns out that we have a few less degree changes coming through. With the we look for official transcripts, and they still keep coming, even though they may have finished up over the summer. So I'm able to increase my request for the degree change stipends, which is account number 01811000152, also on that page 49. And my request would be to increase that to $119,621.38, which would be the difference, and the remainder would be left in that family engagement line.
Okay.
And just in case I wrote a motion, because that's kind of a mess.
All right.
So,
Mrs. Shute?
for clarity, you're saying that we are able to bring a social worker onto staff starting in January?
That's all I was asked to do, was to try and find the money to leave funds in there for salary.
That's excellent. Thank you.
Mrs. Blair?
Did you say you wrote a motion?
I did.
Oh.
So we can say it properly.
Yes, I like that. I'd like to see it. I'd like to hear it. I'd like to see it.
Pass it around.
All right. Well,
That's-
why don't, before we...
5 copies.
Oh, you may...
I didn't know who was going to read it.
Okay. Further questions?
Just, Heather, could you read the account number of where you were taking that money from again? I couldn't.
It's on the second page.
Okay.
It's on page 49, the last 2
Oh, all
lines
right.
she's talking about.
Thank you. I got it.
All right. As a practical question, I'd like to ask Mr. Spivak, what was the Finance Committee's recommendation on this? I assume it has a recommendation.
We didn't per se have a recommendation, but we did request that the transfer be removed and discussed as we're discussing right now. I can give you my opinion. We didn't, discuss as an entire committee what to do, but I think, several board members have mentioned the salary going towards a social worker, and I know that was in one of our initial presentations by Director of Pupil Services that was later cut from the budget. So, I just want to ask the question of Kim and explain to us how this would fit into your future plans and how you see it going forward from January, and then, introducing that for the next year or two.
Actually, I had put forth, as we had discussed back in July, I believe, into my budget for moving forward for 18-19, a social work position and 1 FTE. So this would just move that to happening more quickly than I had originally anticipated.
Further questions? All right. In light of Mrs. Mashaw's draft motion.
I'll make that motion.
All right, so Mr. Spivak will make the motion. Will someone make a second?
Second. I will.
All right, Mrs. Early moved fastest, so she gets the second. All right. It's a motion to amend budget transfer number 2018-010 to reflect a reduction of $32,443.59 from account number 01.8.2110.111, certified salaries / family engagement / DW, and to increase account number 01.8.110.152. And at this point, the television audience is realizing why we do this on consent. Degree change stipend / salaries / DW by $32,443.59. The amended budget transfer would allocate a total of $71,114.41 from the certified salary / family engagement / DW account and 119,621.38 from the degree change stipends / salaries / DW to the annual salary variance transfer. $32,443.59 would remain in the certified salaries / family engagement / DW account, and I will give a copy to the secretary so it will magically appear fully on the minutes. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Sounds like it carries unanimously. Congratulations.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
All right. We have a number of policy items.
We're skipping capital budget?
Oh, did I skip capital budget? Yes, I did. Sorry. Mr. Burke, you report? Oh,
We got
Miles is going to report to us on the capital budget. Thank you.
Technology jobs are my favorite.
I almost got rid of your job for the moment, and you would have gone, why was I here? Sorry.
It's always a pleasure.
Now, do we have the projectors on?
They were on before the meeting started.
Maybe they went to sleep. All right, it looks like they're waking up. Thank you, Miles, because I do not know how to do that myself.
That was short life.
And, well, we do have the capital improvement plan, which I believe is what you're working from.
Yes.
All right, so while the audience will be at a slight disadvantage and our television audience will be at a slight disadvantage, at least the board can follow on.
We can catch up with the slides. What we go through is first I'll give you a summary of what happened with last year's requests. go through the HVAC status, and then give you a rundown on what we want to request for this year. Last year, number one was the district replacement of a Board of Ed truck. We have that truck, it's on hand, it's operational, it's working great. Pine Grove, we were finishing up with the air handling and the RTU replacements. They're all in place, they're working, we're going through some punch lists now. We'll be working on those for the next few months because there's some work that has to be caught up when school's not in session. But the majority of the work's been done, they're in place, we have air conditioning and we have heat.
Excellent.
And then the third item is the LED light replacement. We began that project in Roaring Brook. Roaring Brook is about 95% plus completed. There's about 3 classrooms we didn't convert to LED lighting because they needed the natural lighting for student support student 504 plans, and there's some lights. There's a small number of lights that the manufacturer went out of business before we could get the lights. So our contact is trying to find replacement lights for those, or canopy lights, or like the canister lights at the entranceways. But all the classroom lights and the hallway lights have been done. And we had a budget of about $120,000, and it came in well under budget, so we were able to begin planning, and we should be able to start the middle school hopefully this Christmas. We're having some issues because of the drywall ceilings, but we think we have a solution. We'll get that resolved. I think the final demonstration of the solution is next week, and so we hope to start replacing some of the interior lightings around Christmas time. Parking lot and asphalt and milling was on our request last year, but that's now been rolled into the town's pavement plan, along with all their other parking lots. We have the majority of the parking lot space. We were able to finish Roaring Brook last year. Every piece of asphalt in Roaring Brook, including the playgrounds, is new, and was also able to do the lower parking lot at the middle school. This year's plan is to finish out the middle school, and then we'll move on from there. But that'll depend again on the towns, the Department of Public Works capital. You'll see in your slides, and there's not much really to talk about on the for the HVAC update. There was an error on the Pine Grove one in the initial slide pack. We did update the coils and the condensing units this year.
Okay,
that was an error on my part. And as I get into requests, the high school, this is the next building we're going to go for. And there's a few other there's water boilers, domestic water boilers that are in the plan also. They'll be done earlier than the HVAC systems on it. I'll give you all a chance to. If there are no questions, I'll move on to our requests for 2018-2019. We're requesting a total of $902,000, and without the summary slide, I'll just go over each amount as we go through each of the requests. The first request is phase 1 of security upgrades for $265,000. That's to install exterior locks on all their doors, electronic locks. There's about 40 of them in the district between the 5 schools and the central office. That'll go to a fob system identical to what the town is using. It'll be their same system. That by using their system, we can have the fobs gives us better security for lockdowns. If we discharge an employee, it saves us on key control, gets improved greatly because we can turn off individual key cards or fobs. By using the same system as the town, it facilitates the first responders because we'll just have the police and the fire department's codes loaded into our system, so they'll have access to our buildings without having to have individual keys and the like. Along with that, we want to add visitor doors to the middle school and the high school. Right now, those two schools, if you walk in the front door, the office doesn't see you as a visitor. Here at the high school, we have to mitigate that by putting an individual there at the front desk. So we have 3 security people in the high school. 2 of them are tied to a desk the whole day. One is in the back door due to the open campus policy. The other one is in the front door monitoring visitors. At the middle school, you walk in, get buzzed in, and a visitor has basically free reign of the school because there's another set of doors you have to go through before you even get to the office doors. So by putting in a visitor door that goes directly into those 2 offices, we increase the security of the schools by controlling the visitors and have them go through a sign-in in the offices before they can enter the school proper. And in the central office doors, we want to replace just their old doors. They stick a lot, and when we put the new locks on there, we're going to have to modify the doors in any case, and that wasn't, in the whole scheme of things, wasn't that much more to put on better security doors, both the front and the rear entrance of the central office. That's for phase 1 for this year. Just go on, there was a question too about out years. Phase 2 next year will be security cameras, possibly a door at Pine Grove School, because right now, Pine Grove School, dismissal all happens through the main door. So you have parent pickup and buses, and the more confusion you have at an entrance, the less security you have. So that's our phase 2, majority of that. We don't have anything in the out years. We're waiting on the APD is working on our assessment. We'll look at that and see if there's any capital issues in that. We'll either move them up or put those in the out years depending what their assessment is.
Lyles, if I could ask a question. Because you have a key fob, will you be keeping track of who comes and goes electronically?
We could, and we can limit access to certain times of the day. For instance, let's say a teacher has one, we can limit their access to just school hours.
Understood.
But we would also be able to, I believe the system will allow us to go in and see who came in at certain times too.
Okay, that was my question, whether or not that capability was going to be used.
And we have that capability too, just on the fire alarm system, not on the fire alarm, on the burglar alarm system too. Those that have limited codes to the alarms, they're unique. So we can tell if somebody comes in and disarms the intrusion alarms as well. Just as an added security thing that we're using now.
I think I was given a once-only code, so I only can get in or out once.
And that probably doesn't exist anymore because we cleaned them all out last summer.
Sorry.
Our second priority is the high school fire alarm replacement. We were notified about a year ago, and too late for last year's capital, that they are no longer making parts for the system that we have. So as things break on the panel, it's coming out of people's shelf stock or, cannibalization of other systems that may be out there that are replaced. So we need to replace the system. What we're talking with the fire marshal and with the town, we all kind of agreed that we want to come up with about the same system everybody has, and that's a Honeywell-based system. That's what our schools had, that's what the town has. Siemens is very much proprietary. There are proprietary Honeywell systems, but they're all, you can use one vendor can do them all. With the Siemens, you have to go to a Siemens vendor. To the Honeywell, you have to go to a Honeywell vendor. This will help simplify things greatly if we have everybody under the same type of system.
Myers,
yes,
what is the life of it?
I don't have that. I wasn't able to get that, but the point it's, and I can get that for, I'll try and find that out.
All right.
But right now, I'm getting calls from Siemens about every other day now because they want to come in and replace the system because they're telling us they can't replace the parts. But
all right, thank you.
I'll see if I can find that out. And there was a little bit added to that because we can add some as we get closer to it. If this is approved and we get ready to go for the RFP, there are some enhancements we can put on for security, such as Roybrook has the panic buttons. We can do certain things with the speaker systems and just not have a basic fire alarm that only is useful when there's a fire per se. So we'll make this about the security, with all the enhancements we can get for it. The third thing on the list is the high school air handling system, and that's a three-phase operation. It totals out to be a little bit over $1 million for the final product. Their equipment lifespan's around 15 years old. They're 20 years old right now in the system. It's okay. We were able to push it off because Pine Grove had a higher priority. But we are getting some compressors. We had to replace a couple compressors this summer, so it's time to do something with this system. We'll start in the academic wing, which is that way. And that's basically rooftop units. And then the following years, the price goes up because we have to do internal systems like we had to do at Pine Grove. Basically break stuff down, take it out of the building, and bring in new condensers, new compressors, and the like. So it'll be 3 years to complete the high school. And that's for this year, we're asking for $240,000. Next is LED lighting, continuing the swap out on that. Again, Roaring Brook was successful, came in under budget, so I was able to lower the request this year. I think on our plan last year, we had $150,000 for the middle school. This year, I'm only going to ask for $100,000 to do the middle school. We have submitted the paperwork for the rebate, but that's just got completed recently, so we don't have that back yet. We're anticipating 20 to 30% return, which will be, we've worked it out with the town where that will then go back into this fund site on the capital, and we'll be able to use that Eversource rebate to lower costs for the out years. The middle school will only provide about a 10% rebate because there were some upgrades done in the past years. That's an estimate. We won't know, of course, until we actually submit everything. And as I said, we're working on the middle school now. We hope to get started on soon. We have done some of the exterior lights. This were some operational funds we had. So we don't have the bright yellow that came out of the middle school in the past. It's now LED. Just like the high school is that we did a couple years ago. So hopefully this year we'll be able to finish the middle school by the end of next summer. Next on the list is a field mower replacement for was that $72,000, and that includes a trailer to go with it. It's unfortunately the TV audience can't see the picture, but there's a picture included to show why it's a $62,000 lawnmower.
$72,000.
$72,000 with the trailer. It is bare bones. The town bought one similar to it for a bit more than $72,000 with the trailer. So we're going with the basic one on. And I will also say that that's a 17-year-old lawnmower, and in those 17 years, the town has bought about 3 lawnmowers. So we've done our best. We're going to try and keep it running, but it is the only large mower we have for all the athletic fields we have. We do about 20 acres a week. It's in operation every day, all day, from about spring till late fall. We're still mowing about every day with it. So it gets a lot of wear. Now we are going to try and get it rehabbed a little bit once the season's over, but if it fails, we're going to be in a bit of a hurt for keeping up with the grass.
I actually had a question on that one for you, Miles. When I was looking at this, and it's funny you brought up the town's lawnmower, is there any opportunity there for somehow the town and the Board of Education to work together to maybe save some money and benefit everybody as a whole?
They have just we are both basically just on the level of what we need to maintain the grass that we have. There's not really much extra capacity on either side.
So their mower's not sitting in the shed while we're using ours? They're both going at the same time?
No, it's doing, they have added it up. Between Fisher Meadows and Buckingham, they have a little bit more grass than we do.
So they're both getting utilized as far as you can tell?
Yes, it is. Yeah, because there's been times when we thought about trying to use theirs and it would have to be a weekend, and then it just, when you get into overtime, it just doesn't come worth it.
Thanks.
Next is the Pine Grove School water boiler. This is for domestic hot water. There's 2 water boilers in the system. One was replaced, I think, about 2009. And then this one is about 27 years old. It was installed in 1998. It's on its last legs. It's getting a little bit aged. It's, we can, if something happens before this gets approved, we can operate on 1 water boiler, but we don't want to do that for a very long time. Next on the list is the district baseball fields. We basically have 2 fields that the athletic department would like to have rehab. One is here at the high school. It's in pretty rough shape. It'll take about $35,000 to bring it up. And that includes just scraping everything down to the ground and starting over again almost on the clay. Putting down a layer of sand, putting the clay on top of it, rebuilding the pitcher's mound, leveling out the field. It's full of ruts out there. Just making it playable, right, for everybody. And then also replacing the the dugout seats, which look like they're original to the school. If I get a chance to walk out and look at them. I don't have pictures of that because I tried, but the pictures just don't do justice to what needs to be repaired on that field. And then there's also thought about doing it. There's one in the middle school. It's in the back part. It hasn't been used in a long time. Very much overgrown. But there could be additional use for that between the high school and both the rec department, having another field at the middle school. So that would be for next year, or the following year, phase 2. The final request is for carpet replacement at Thompson Brook. We have a few pieces of carpet left in all our schools, but Thompson Brook, for whatever reason, is the only school that doesn't have an account, capital account. There is what's left to do out there is the administration office, the course room, which would be a carpet replacement, that's not tile. But the 5 classrooms in the admin office would be with replacing it with tile like we've done in all the other buildings. Again, as I talked about last year, it doesn't include asbestos abatement.
Why would there be any asbestos if Thompson Brook wasn't built until 1998?
We don't anticipate it to be in there, but we still have to test for it because it sneaks into everything. It's usually in the carpet mastic that it sneaks into.
Really?
So far, we've tested a few places. We did a little bit of it this year, and we have tested the admin office. We haven't found any. And like Pine Grove, we haven't found any yet. We do have architect letters for both of them. It says asbestos material wasn't used, but we still test it just to be on the safe side. But we don't anticipate finding any. I'd throw that in there because if we do find it, we just wiped out $10,000 off the budget just to abate it. So in summary, got a nice summary slide there, but it's $902,000 is what our request going forward is what we recommend for our request, pursuant to y'all's approval.
Thank you, Miles. Mr. Burke, does the Capital Budget Committee concur?
Absolutely. We met a week ago and we had a great discussion. Only other data point I'll share is that the district's security updates we have put in for a grant, about 40% could be reimbursable. And we acknowledge that there's other pieces of equipment that are over their useful life, particularly the AHU at Thompson Brook. But we've discussed with Miles, and it sounds like that's in good condition. He's monitoring the situation. Could come up when they bring it in front of the town council, but just FYI to all of you. But I think the subcommittee was unanimously okay with it.
All right, so I'll take it you'll move the approval.
We'll move to approve the proposed capital improvement plan for the next fiscal year.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Young seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carries unanimously. Thank you, Miles. All right.
It's the original, it's 27 years old.
Next
it's
item
original.
are the policies. So, Mrs. Zaroli, I'll turn the microphone over to you.
What goes to the town.
Okay, the first one is 1120, public participation at Board of Ed meetings. Went through this, Dr. Pattyfoot recommended a change to ensure accuracy with what's happening. So that's the deletion that you'll see on that page. On 1250, I believe you were given a revised copy. We'll need another revision in that the committee requested that we refer also to, not just legal statute, but also refer to volunteer policy, because the volunteer policy is spelled out in a different place, and also pickup procedures in the handbooks, because again, those are going to be different visits to the school. So 1250 is a new policy recommended by our Director of Security. In the past, we had a regulation, which they also recommended changes to that regulation as well. Again, we don't usually, we don't approve regulations at the board level, but we like to look at them. So that is included in your package. So I don't know if anybody has any questions on
I do.
either. Okay.
On the community, the visits to the school. Bless you. Bless you.
I'm sorry, which one?
The visits
Okay.
to the school.
Yep.
I was just reading it, and I was kind of wondering how this would impact somebody, like if my son forgets his lunch. Do I need prior approval from the principal to come and bring him his lunch?
I would imagine that you'd probably drop it off.
I would imagine that too, but
in
this
the office.
says even to, I mean,
Yes.
some of the wording was very strict. I wanted to make sure that this was allowing for kind of regular things. And then maybe because of the nature of my kids, I thought, oh my gosh, I could be one of these people who, like where it says frequency of visits. Is this
So this
not
is
for the casual kind of drop off?
right. No, it's not for. I mean, it's not to prevent. Even though I would say once, and I'm never doing it again, dear. That but what this is hopeful to prevent is sometimes what we heard was realtors would come in and want to take people on tours. So it's to prevent that kind of a thing that administration has other things to do than take potential buyers around the school. So that it's really for that, to prevent unnecessary stopping in and detracting from someone's time or safety, really.
Kathy,
No, you had.
okay. I had a couple questions on the visitor's logbook, which is referenced on page 64, the bottom and the top of page 65. And it's different for the high school versus all the other Avon public schools. So in the logbook for the high school, it requests a car description and then time in and time out.
Yep.
And on the other schools, we don't request a time in and time out, and I thought that could be valuable, knowing who's in the building at certain times.
He actually brought up that he wants to get them all the same, but right now each one is done separately, differently at each building, and it's his goal to make them all the same. So the regulation may well change. I suspect, based on what he said, it will change.
Okay, but for us
Would
to
that be
request
correct?
time in and time out.
That would be correct, that's accurate. This reflects current practice.
So currently, all the schools have their own process, and he's going to fix that so it's consistent, and it's the high schools, so it will have the car and information. It will have more information, not less. Does that answer you?
That does, but I mean, I don't know why he's changing the sheet so they write down the time, so we know who's in the building at certain times. And I think it's
We'll look into that. I'll discuss it with the Director of Security.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Laura?
So I had the same concerns as Jackie with respect to the language being seemingly very restrictive. If I'm a parent or guardian, I would find this to be overly restrictive. It does not strike me as being visitor-friendly or community-friendly. I understand not wanting to have random realtors or random salespeople coming into the buildings, but it
Well,
seems like
not
it's
just meant
restricting.
for, I don't want to just to imply that. That was one example given to us.
Well,
But
random
also
people.
as parents, we don't just pop in and go into classrooms unless there's a scheduled, you're doing interest and, visiting, whatever the centers that you do, those kinds of things. So Deb wanted to speak, I think.
Upon first reading it, I had the same response. So we had a very lengthy conversation about this, which is why Kathy mentioned that we wanted to add in the links to the volunteers and what was the other one, Kathy?
Pickup procedures.
And pickup procedures, because this was clarified as truly responding to just pop-in visits without any kind of forewarning for the sake of curiosity. It's not a matter of if you signed up to volunteer in your teacher's room, like you would have already been approved through the volunteer procedure for that to happen. So I agree. I mean, it says community relations. So I was fuzzy myself, so we talked about it quite a bit, which is why we said we should put those other connections in there so that parents can see the difference, that it's not really referring to what you're bringing up. Even though we talked about that, it's really referring to just outside people popping in and thinking they're welcome to walk into a class because they're curious. It's more to respect the building's operations and privacy, and also for security reasons, to be safe.
It does say where the visitation involves direct contact with district students or observation of an identified student or program. So maybe that's the wording that I would use, that somebody kind of who had a reason to be there for a second would use as protection. I would hate for this to ever be misconstrued, because obviously I really love security measures, and I've never popped in my kid's class.
Right, I
can't
think, so
imagine
there's
that.
a difference between showing up at the office and being expected to have carte blanche walking into a student's class. That, to me, strikes me as extremely different. So visiting a school building to walk in to bring lunch for somebody who's forgotten their lunch is different than just saying, I expect to be able to walk into my student's classroom. So I'm wondering, A, how much of a problem is that people are showing up and walking into class, which strikes me as unusual at any grade level, and how to make this sound less restrictive. I don't know.
And I would say I like the idea, oh, go ahead, but like for a guidance, if you had an appointment with guidance, would you need to be approved by the principal first?
No, that's not what this is intended to capture. This is, I mean, you have an appointment with guidance, you're going to sign in and you're going to say you're going to guidance. I had heard that this has been an issue in terms of specifically the realtor. And our director of security has requested this for the safety of our students. So again, Deb is correct. We had a good, healthy discussion about how does this, we want it to be protective but not overly frightening to parents. So that is certainly not the intention. I don't know if Dr. Pattyfoot wants to add.
Yeah, I can understand your concern, but I think that the greater concern is the safety of the students. And when you enter the building as parents and you sign in and you're here for a dedicated purpose, whether it's to drop off something that your child forgot or you have a scheduled appointment with guidance or someone else, that's routine business as far as we're concerned. This is more the unanticipated drop-in by someone, a realtor or someone else.
Okay.
Someone drives by the school and wants to know more about the school and decides to drop in.
Yeah, go ahead.
How would we address, for example, this is an area that is quite transient. I'm going to throw out, someone is moving here for, being transferred with UTC, and they're looking at Canton, Avon, Farmington, and Simsbury schools. Can they make an appointment and come in and visit the school because they're moving to this area and want to see the inside of a building? I mean, you point out that a realtor might be somebody who's just showing up unannounced, but if they call in advance and want to bring their children to come visit a building, can they do that?
Presently, once the student is registered, then they can make an appointment to go through the building. but we refer parents to the website where we have a lot of our information online. They can call and speak with the principal and ask questions, but just to drop in and, see the building, we don't do that during the school hours.
Can they do it during non-school hours?
We haven't been, again, it was a very large problem a number of years ago where people were just coming in expecting to see the building. And we understand that with parents, but we're happy to meet with them in central office. I've spoken with a number of parents that have questions about curriculum. If they have specific building questions, we refer them to the principals. The principals, speak with them and answer any questions they have. So no one has come back a second time with questions after we have answered them or push, I've got to see the building, because our online websites have more detail on them than they did, say, 3 or 4 years ago.
Further questions?
I would just add that I shared these exact same concerns Jackie's bringing up and Laura's bringing up at the policy meeting. And like Deb said, we had a good discussion about why we think the spirit of this policy makes sense. I will tell you that I think if this policy is applied the way it's written, to the letter, it could create problems like Jackie's bringing up and Laura's bringing up. I think everybody sitting here, all of us in the policy meeting, agreed that the spirit of the policy was to protect the schools, to not give parents who have legitimate reasons to be in schools a hard time. But I agree the way this policy reads feels kind of restrictive. So if the policy does go into place, hopefully it'll work the way it's intended. If it doesn't and it creates problems, I think one thing we might have to do is try to better define what a visit is. And we talk about visit here and then we say, well, the guidance meeting or the dropping off the lunch, that's not a visit. That's not what we're talking about. So, there might come a point where we have to do a little better job defining what we mean here. But, again, we did have a good discussion at the policy meeting, and I think the spirit and the intent is in the right place, but the wording might potentially cause some issues.
I think that's typically why either districts accept it or you don't accept it, but this probably mirrors what our practice is. So you don't have a policy, but this most likely mirrors what we do.
Mrs. Young?
I'm not a broker, but I would also be interested in understanding what other communities such as Farmington, Canton, Simsbury, and West Hartford are doing with respect to this, because I would hate for us to end up being the unfriendly district that doesn't allow potential people who want to move here, who may not have yet registered their children, to find out what the inside of our schools look like.
Well, I think also Mrs. Russick's comment about off-hour visits is probably appropriate, so that if someone really wants to come through and look at the school, there's no reason to do it while it's in session and to potentially disrupt the learning environment. But if you really need to see the inside of rooms, I'm sure arrangements can be made off hours. So I suspect that if there will be a hue and cry and we will hear about it, we will probably change the policy. My suspicion is it won't be a problem. But it's a first read, wanted to let everybody know. And then next time around, we'll approve it or not.
And if there are specific changes that you would like to propose, please send them to me. I'll get them to the full committee. But again, I think Dr. Pattyfoot just saying, really, this is what we're doing. It's not meant to be more harsh than what's occurring. It's meant to put it in writing and to help support administration have it in writing.
The last comment I would make is that I completely support the spirit of this regulation. I think it's a very good idea that we have some concrete steps about how we do these things. I appreciate your words, and I really also appreciate what Jay said, that we kind of can maybe do this, have certain steps in these other schools too about, in and out and signing, and it's a good idea.
Okay, so then the next one would be 1251. This is also new. Again, recommendation by our Director of Security. We had some good dialogue around this too. They felt strongly that this would be important to have. to help, again, support administration should they notice that someone's loitering, looking that they have the authority to say, you may not loiter. It is not permissible. All right, 9132. So this is one that Dr. Pattyfoot had mentioned to me in early September, that she had some suggestions for some changes that might help us with efficiency and some things she's seen in her years. So she brought this forward. We discussed and had a very good discussion at our policy committee. And before you stands the revised one, and you have a new version that you received electronically and is in front of you. So page 68 has been revised to include not just what the committees are, but what the charge of the committee is. So the past policy said, or the current policy I should say, it says the number of the committees, and it also says that each the chair will outline the duties of the committee at the time of appointment. So what this is saying is it's changing the committees, and what we discussed was taking all finance type related committees and consolidating them into one. So audit, budget, well, budget committee is done by the whole, so it's really not a committee. So audit and capital budget would be consolidated into finance. Policy, and we renamed negotiations. It was personnel. We renamed it to negotiations, as that was more in keeping with what they're doing. And then the other one that we had a good deal of dialogue around was taking the Communications, School Climate, and Culture Committee, and we discussed the need for a curriculum committee, and then we looked at professional practices, and that's what we landed on, curriculum and professional practices, which would adopt the spirit and intent of the Climate and Culture Committee, as well as give it an avenue for coming into documents that would then come before the board. So recommendations for professional development, recommendations for curriculum, and also be more engaged and involved with I took it as the CPDC Curriculum Professional Development Committee, Council, the Council. So that there'd be more eyes on that, on the curriculum. So that was what we put here for our discussion. And I had heard someone was concerned that we were trying to maybe rush this through. No, there's no attempt to rush. It's a discussion, it's a first read, and we're here to have a conversation and hear your thoughts.
Let me start off and make a few comments. That I wasn't sure, surprised that anyone would ever think I couldn't be heard. My memory was that we hadn't quite picked on the name of the committee yet. I had spoken to Mrs. Blea, who chairs the Communications, School, Climate, and Culture Committee, which is in fact a mouthful, if she had a particular name that she would like, and I know that she's thinking about it. When I drafted the names, and Mrs. Zaroli pointed out to me that she felt it was a change, therefore it should be highlighted, I called it the Learning Committee, because I thought it was somewhat misleading to call it the Curriculum and Professional Practices Committee, when in fact it doesn't have general responsibility for curriculum, which was, I thought, a little bit misleading. But anyway, that just shows you the level of nitpicking we can engage on at the policy committee and get very excited about. And then and Mrs. Early laughs because she knows that we really do get very excited about it. We do take it passionately. The second paragraph does need to be fixed. It wasn't fixed on this draft, though it was fixed on the draft I sent in. There's no reason for the chair to outline the duties of standing committees at the time of appointment. And then so we just pick up with the committees, plural, will regularly report to the Board of Education. The reason for making these changes are that I think everybody would agree we're attending too many meetings. So therefore, if we can shrink the number of committees, that will automatically result, hopefully, in fewer meetings. The Board of Ed went from having one meeting a month, thank you very much, with occasional committee work, to some weeks, I know I attend 4 meetings a week. And I'm sure the interim superintendent is probably going, oh my God, what are these people doing? So that was the genesis behind this. Well, and I'm a little fey sometimes, and I do make people laugh occasionally, but that is actually a real concern, that when meeting fatigue sets in, good things don't happen. So that question, if anyone has comments, we'd love to hear them.
I have a comment about the committee that we were talking about. I'm really excited about these new opportunities that our committee might be taking on. I really appreciate your input and kind of direction on this, because I think because we have been a committee of one party, it felt awkward sometimes to, put forward motions. So we're anxious to do good work and bring deliverables to the board.
Well, let me just comment on that we do want the committees to advance things to the full board. And also one of the things in terms of people rushing, there is a little rush because I would like to have this done by the December meeting so the incoming board will get this as their first structure so that it would apply in January. So it's not intended to be a real rush.
Following policy.
Yeah, we're certainly following policy because it can be read twice, so normally it'd be approved in November. But correct, and one of the issues is how to better utilize everybody's time, and I apologize for interrupting.
Lost my train of thought. I had a really amazing thing to say right after you did that, but I don't remember what it was. I'm appreciative. I'm looking forward to it. I don't know how my other committee members feel, but I think it's like a really hopeful kind of concrete direction that we can be going to make really valuable change in a positive direction. So I'm excited. I don't agree with all of these words. I don't want to get that. I agree with most of these words, but I'm excited that we're discussing it and moving forward and trying to figure out exactly what would be the right fit for all of us.
Well, the standard response is if you have any suggestions as to word changes, and this was me at whatever hour in the morning it was, typing away, trying to figure out the best way to say it in light of our history. So,
well, I'm interested in the curriculum part because my understanding is that a lot of our local districts have curriculum subcommittees. So I'd like to really learn more about that and learn what our role could be there, if it would be helpful. But I'm getting the feeling from you you're not comfortable with the curriculum part of it, or what's your concern about the curriculum?
well, it's not particularly a concern, but I believe the Board of Education statutorily has the obligation as a whole. Could we delegate it to a committee? Sure. But certainly school climate has an effect on curriculum, has a serious effect on learning. And improving professional development certainly has a significant change. So if you want to propose further changes, we could have the full curriculum go through the committee and come up, and Mrs. Aroli would like to say something.
I was hoping that I was addressing your concern by saying that the committee does not have a general responsibility for curriculum, which is the responsibility of the Avon Board of Ed as a whole. So I was hoping that I would capture that, but yet also giving that lens to be another eye for curriculum that we did discuss as being important. And we heard from our administration that they felt that would be great if curriculum was a focus of the board.
I guess I feel like everything goes to the larger board, right? And every committee in policy or in finance, you guys work on it there, do the minutia, kind of have those great discussions. I mean, details.
We're detail oriented. We're very detail oriented.
I meant it in all great, amazing feelings. Yeah, so I don't know how that would be different from any other committee, really, because everything comes to the larger board, right? We would be working on it, and we'd say, hey, and you'd say yay or nay.
I'd be happy to have a discussion offline on the topic. Be fun.
And send your suggestions, and I'll share them with the committee.
Okay.
I would just like to add, sorry, for my chair over here, doing a little curriculum work.
Sure.
It would be nice to have a venue with some board members to have a longer conversation about some of the work that we're doing in depth, because sometimes I feel we shortchange it in those 10 to 15 minutes presentations of understanding some of the initiatives we have going, the work we're doing, what our student assessments look like, how we're using that to inform instruction and change it. So just from my chair, that would be a place for the larger conversation that more board members would have a deeper understanding as we move it forward for the approval pieces.
Okay. Further comments?
Jay?
Mr. Spivak.
Yes, I appreciate less committees and less meetings, but I do feel, the committees are now going to have more responsibility. So in looking at the Finance Committee, one of the committees we are dropping is Alternative Resources and Regional Services, which I feel like we don't need another committee, but maybe it could be incorporated within the Finance Committee under, you have listed under financial planning. I just don't want us to forget about the Regional Services and the Alternative Resources, which we've had numerous discussions and several initiatives which have been valuable to the district. And going forward to more difficult budgets, I feel like those are going to be extremely valuable going into the future. So I think it can fall under financial planning, but I don't want to forget about those aspects.
Okay.
The last sentence under Finance Committee, I don't know why that's necessary, and I'm sure what it's trying to state. The committee does not have the responsibility for the general budget, which is the responsibility of the Avon Board of Education as a whole. I feel like everything we discuss at the Finance Committee goes forward to the entire board, and we do have discussions about the budget within the Finance Committee. It's just we don't vote on anything. So
We used to have a separate budget committee, and then it just became the whole board. I don't know if the words need to be.
Well, the theory was that it's the responsibility for the whole board, that it's not the responsibility of a committee to come forward with the committee's proposed budget. We take the superintendent's budget and then work on it. That was what was intended by the sentence.
I feel like that's understood, and it's just sticking a line within one of the committees is not explaining what we do.
Okay.
As a whole.
Mrs. Young.
So as far as trying to incorporate the audit committee in with the finance committee, it is my opinion that the audit committee can provide an additional oversight role to help ensure financial accountability. And we do not have what I would describe as excessive meetings. I think that the business manager has done an excellent job of working with our committee, at least in the time that I've been involved with it, to review the draft management letter that we get from the town and determine whether or not there's anything that we need to do to respond to it. We've had a clean audit for the last 2 years that I've been involved with it, and I just feel like there's an opportunity there for additional oversight and to work together alongside the superintendent with the town, but I feel like it's a different function than what the finance committee is doing on a monthly basis to look at the current state of the budget and how that compared to the previous year and making sure that we're staying on track to not overspend. It feels to me like they're different functions, and I can't speak for the people. One of our committee members is now moved. We have one who's going to be leaving this board, and we will have an opportunity for new people to join. I don't feel that we have too many meetings, but I'll leave that up for further discussion. I'm not convinced that it makes sense to combine that with another committee.
Understood, and there was actually a significant discussion on that point. There were some who felt in the committee that audit should be separate because audit is a separate function and should generally never be combined with anything. I didn't prevail. There you go. Further questions? Going once, going twice. All right, we've completed the first read with more discussion than normal. Thank you all for that. Chair's ruminations, which generally means that we're not intending to vote on anything. And it's semester grade. Yes?
Can I finish?
Oh, I'm sorry. We thought we'd done it.
Thank you.
I apologize.
9323, let me get the right order. Yes, that's it. So agenda preparation and dissemination. Again, this edit here is to say exactly what we do. So we were not doing something that was said here. So this is to correct an error, okay? And then 9325.2, agenda format. Again, this was looking at it with fresh eyes and trying to get a change made with things that made more sense for our agenda. And so we had good discussion with Dr. Patty Foote on this, and these are the recommended changes to the agenda. Any questions on those two? All right, thank you. Now you go.
Now I can go. All right. As I think a number of people have been aware, there's been a question about semester grades at the Avon High School instead of year-long grades and how this was communicated. A number of people on various sides of the discussion have expressed their concerns with how it was communicated to the Board of Ed, from the Board of Ed, to the parents, from the parents. And so my thought is it's always best to have a little bit of sunshine, and so I was going to allow people to discuss it. It was not intended to have any motions regarding it, but we recognize that this is a change, and there are some people, which I think have made a cogent argument, that the system that a particular student faces upon enrollment should follow the student until their graduation, which actually I think may not be a bad idea. So, does anyone have any comments they'd like to make?
I think it would just be helpful if we could just walk through exactly how this played out, just for clear. Yes, so Kathy, I don't know if you want to speak to that.
I didn't know that you wrote that small.
Well, from a policy perspective, the first thing I'd say is to touch a policy 3 times in 3 years is not the way to go. So, you know, a number of things have come into play. It was addressed in 2016. We made another change again. So I'm sorry, 2015 we started this. We changed it. We changed it again in 2016. We changed it again in 2017. Although the issue at hand that we changed, we didn't change. Our committee addressed it and said, we support administration's recommendation. You need to communicate it. It isn't a policy change, it's an implementation change. Therefore, we're not changing the actual words of the policy, but you administration communicate. And administration changed. And there was interim, and then there was interim. And so it fell through the cracks, is the best I can figure. And therefore, it wasn't communicated as it was promised to be communicated. And nor can policy ever make a change without bringing it to the full board. So that was part of the language, but technically speaking, policy didn't vote to change a policy. We voted to support administration's implementation, but requiring communication that didn't occur. We also have policy asked many times for updates by administration on how changes are going. Are there enough supports in place for the, collapse of levels? We've asked for updates, and again, administration has rapidly changed. So we don't have the support reply that we asked for. We didn't get the updates that we've asked for. And looking at everything, we went through this with a fine-tooth comb. Yep. All the minutes, everything. It just could not be supported to have the implementation change go through because it wasn't communicated to the students, to the parents, to anyone in a timely manner. So I approved of the communication going out. Dr. Patty Foote, was lockstep with what was going to happen. I agreed with it. I will say that what I will request again is that administration now is charged
Poor David is sitting in the audience.
with clean slate, but we have asked that administration take a look at this grading policy and suggest best practices. And we had asked in the past to have draft transcripts, mocked up with Jane Smith, John Doe, whatever, but we never did get a look at what transcript would look like. So there are some things that we've specifically asked for, and we would love to have this policy come back to the committee with recommendations, but after a serious study and, best practices and comparisons that are done with the students' input, lockstep with students, so that they're engaged and involved and aware, and it wouldn't change, and again, we go back to what Houston just said, it should not change students that are at the school. It's already started with a GPA. That GPA should stay the same throughout. We shouldn't be mixing up GPAs mid-timing. So that's a little bit of background. I don't know if that covers what you wanted.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because I think it was just a matter of, let's just talk about what happened. There's no ill will on any side. We all want what's best for the students, so I just think it's helpful to just talk about it here. So I appreciate you doing research, and I know that Dr. Pattyfoot did a lot of research on this as well, so I just think it's helpful to have the conversation.
One of the issues was, I believe there was a discussion at the board level that didn't result in a motion, but that resulted in a consensus from the board. I didn't go back and watch all the tapes because, having lived each meeting, I generally don't like to go back and watch it again.
Sorry.
And the cameraman smiling. So the objective is not to cast blame, but to make sure that it's done in a little more rigorous fashion in the future. Just simply because we don't want people to be caught by surprise. We want to be able to have a methodical plan and to do things in a measured way and to not surprise parents, students, or ourselves with what we've done. At that point, anyone else like to have a discussion with the chair's ruminations? Mrs. Young.
So I was present and on the committee at the policy meetings during which we had lengthy discussions. This is, of course, prior to your time. And in my opinion, I'm always interested in voting for what makes the most sense and is in the best interest of students. And at the time, during those policy meetings, what was being presented to us was that there was a dilemma of how to best serve the students at Avon High School with respect to the policy regarding grading, whether it be by semester or by the year. And there were, my recollection could be wrong, but there were over 100 students who were going to be affected by the potential to either keep the grades in one way versus the other way. So now we do have the benefit of having a clean slate, as you put it, with our wonderful new principal, and I'm hopeful that we will get some feedback from him and understand moving forward what would serve our students in the best way and make the most sense so that we can support that decision and do the right thing.
Thank you. And I suspect that Mr. Pelling was not aware he was going to be carrying such a heavy mantle after our meeting. Further comments, further questions, further discussion? All right.
Sure. Houston has a couple comments. So I agree with the points that you made, and I believe Dr. Pattyfoot recommended that if a change is ever recommended, it affects the incoming class as opposed to any students that are already at the high school, so it doesn't, affect what they already expect. And I would hope if any changes are discussed that the students, as well as the guidance department, who is obviously in tune with what the transcript's value is to anyone looking at it, are involved in any conversations. And I, just come back to the main problem we had in the past is communication. And communication to everybody who's affected by any change is extremely vital.
Thank you, Mr. Spiga. All right. Mrs. Pattyfoot, I believe you got 2 items on superintendent's update.
Yes, and I have a paper that Dr. Rusak will share with you, pass around. And what I was asked to do was to provide a plan, but What I'd like to do tonight is just provide an update, because anything going forward would be in my proposed budget or the superintendent's proposed budget for next year, since additional funds aren't budgeted for this year. So if you want to take a look at this, the resolved items, backup system, printer, paper cut, the printer system, the virtual network, server synchronization, work order system, the new phone system, Horizon Food Services, upgrade, transition students' rights and access, resolve the Destiny problem, which you probably, I don't know if you were aware of that, that's the library management system, and the hiring of 2 field technicians and a senior network administrator.
Okay. Have we currently hired a network manager? Or
Yes, that was on the October hiring report.
Ah, all right, just, thank you.
Earlier. Current items that we're addressing, the switches, servers, smart devices, imaging, iPads and Apple devices, the VPN solutions, Windows Server update services, Active Directory and account properties for users, remote control, and uninterruptible power sources, or supplies rather. And future items are listed there. And of course, the last one is the disaster recovery plan, which we have talked about before. And you can read the rest there. Consolidation, virtualization, IT topology and architecture, reorganization of head end rooms and closets, and the disaster recovery system.
Thank you for the detailed plan.
You're welcome.
Very helpful.
Any questions? I shouldn't be asking.
I could give you questions if you like.
No.
Laura's got a question.
Any questions? Mrs. Young.
This is a great list. Thank you for providing this. We also got in our packets an updated organizational chart.
Yes.
Which shows the changes in staffing underneath the Director of Technology. Is there any way we can get a financial update that shows, I believe it was at the June meeting when we were told that the changes would be net neutral in terms of reconfiguring the Director of Technology is now no longer, for example, an assistant principal. We've hired an assistant principal. I know that we have had contractual services. There's an open purchase order, I think, for $86,000.
Actually, Mrs. Michaud can speak to the financial aspect of this.
So I'm sorry that at the June meeting that statement was made of net neutral. Clearly, I did not have a moment to review the situation. I believe I spoke to this at Finance Subcommittee as well, stating that once I had reviewed the information in full, the numbers clearly did not show a net neutral position. However, the position following the reorganization is a variance of about $18,357.46.
How much?
$18,357.46.
Okay.
That could shift given bargaining unit.
Further questions? I guess I have one question, which will probably make everybody cringe.
Standard deviation or what?
Yes. There you go. You talk about a consolidation of servers. Is the plan to move them to a single place to consolidate where they're located, or it's a consolidation in the sense of one server will be handling like Thompson Brook and Pine Grove, or we don't know yet?
It will be a combination. So long-term, we're looking at reducing the numbers of servers because with the backups and some cloud-based and some of the larger data systems, for example, Power School now is hosted off-site. We don't need to have servers anymore. So how do we best use our servers? And then ultimately, we're looking at the consolidation of having one building, the primary building, and another building, the secondary building for servers. Because with the updates and all of the manual pieces moving to, being done remotely and through the technology and not someone running from building to building, we'll be able to reduce the numbers of servers, so working smarter and not harder, so to speak. So right now we have a lot of duplication. We're finding that we can really consolidate.
Excellent, thank you. Further questions? All right. Next item, I think, Hanover report.
Yes. Dr. Rusak and I have been meeting with each principal to establish their school goals and their student learning outcomes for the year as part of their annual evaluation. And each principal will be addressing the results of the Hanover report with staff at faculty meetings or school improvement meetings. And each school will examine the results and break the responses apart. So, for example, when I looked through this, we had, of the 450 respondents in the district, there were, of the 450 employees rather, there were 299 respondents across the 5 schools. But yet, when you look at the sample size, when you break down each question, it ranged from a low of 167 respondents to a high of 299. So really, in order to look at the entire set of data, you really have to break it down by building and who responded to the questions. So some of the things that the principals have already discussed with me are ideas like identifying and providing additional supports for various subgroups of the student population, whether it be low-income families or gifted and talented or special education. Researching practices for culturally responsive instruction and leadership, developing enrichment clusters and opportunities for all students, and providing opportunities for family connections on evenings of school-sponsored events, and proactively helping with transportation and scheduling. Those are just some initial concepts that they've generated. Any questions?
Nope, thank you. Appreciate it.
I have a question.
Oh, Mrs. Young.
Is the report available online as part of this month's packet?
I don't know if the report's available as part of this packet because I don't recall seeing it as part of my packet, so.
Just like the NEASC or the school climate reports, I just wondered where it would be.
Well, we could put it up there. I'll ask Shirley to do that.
Okay, other and further business before the meeting. Communications from board members. No communications. All right, committee reports. Let's go through the list. Alternative Resources / Regional Services, Mr. Spivak.
We did not meet, and under the direction from the policy committee, I think I'm going to be phasing that into the finance committee because many of those issues can be discussed at those meetings.
Okay, excellent. Audit, Mrs. Young.
We have not yet received the draft management letter to my knowledge, but as soon as we do, we will be planning a meeting and make that public.
Is the field work completed?
I don't think so.
No. All right, so do we have an estimate as to when field work will be done?
Next week they'll be on.
I'm sorry?
Next week they'll be on the ground.
Oh, so they haven't come in at all yet?
They have, well, they were here in June, they completed their initial preliminary, and then they'll be here for a week.
Okay, all right, so, all right. Capital budget, Mr. Burke.
So we just approved the capital budget. I think we're heading to the town council November 2nd? Yes. Okay.
Good job. Excellent, thank you. And then you're not going to have much to do for the rest of the year.
I'm okay with the policy committee's decision.
All right. Communication / school climate and culture, Mrs. Blaya.
One of the things I wanted to thank you guys, thank the administration for was I think the emails are now up for every person in the district. That's so exciting for me. I mean, for all of us, I think we're very, very grateful that they're finally up, but I really appreciate whatever you guys did to make those pop up. We're all very, very happy about that. We talked about the resource page. We talked about setting new goals, about increasing our communication and identifying implementation of best practices. And I think this will be a living, breathing discussion as we kind of incorporate the new direction, some of the new framework in the policy that we talked about tonight.
We look forward to longer and further reports from your committee.
Oh, they're going to be long and awesome. It's going to be good.
Excellent. Well, as long as they're long and awesome, that's great.
Yes, lots of motions.
Finance, Mr. Spivak.
First, I just want to thank Heather for the way she presented the financial information. I think it's been very transparent and open to all of us in understanding what's going on. And I think the Finance Subcommittee worked as it was supposed to in addressing the budget transfer and drawing questions and then bringing it to the full board to resolve it. And I think that worked out really well in this case. Our next meeting is November 14th at noon.
Thank you, Mr. Spivak. Personnel, Mrs. Rell, there's going to be some that's in executive session, as I recall.
Correct. We've been meeting with the secretaries, the paras, the administrators, and yesterday, I wasn't there, but with the security people. So we've been very busy, but we've got good news. We've got good things to report during executive session.
Excellent. Mrs. Rowley, I think you reported on policy.
Yes, so pending items would be obviously second read, and then we're going to take a look at the ad hoc committees, bylaw 9133, to kind of finish any consolidation or efficiency that's suggested, and the consent agenda and handbooks. Take a look at that, and that will be. It's a special meeting because we moved it from election night, would be our normal first Tuesday, so we moved it to Thursday, November 9th at 7 p.m.
Okay. Mrs. Shute, Board Representative to the Curriculum Professional Development Council.
The first one of the year will be on October 26th, so nothing to report as of yet, but looking forward to it. And I want to invite any other board members who might want to witness that day as well. You're more than welcome to come and experience it too. It's from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. here in the community room.
Thank you. Board of Finance, Mr. Burke.
Board of Finance approved the technology lease purchase approval, and Heather was there. It was great. And then they talked about the ever-changing budget, and I think their next meeting is October 30th.
So they're not going to hold meetings in abeyance until May because the state has no budget.
It could get canceled.
One never knows. All right, Town Council, Mrs. Rell.
I was not at the last meeting, so I'm not sure.
I was not there either, so, okay. Capital Region Educational Council, Mrs. Blea.
There was a lot of discussion about a budget that they were talking about a month ago, so it's not really current right now. I think they're having a general discussion about budget. They celebrated the correct teacher of the year and the 2 paras of the year, and it was very inspirational, very exciting. They had videos, and they had the people were presented, in person, so it was really nice.
My understanding is the governor's proposed budget cuts a third out of CREC, which is going to be a real serious problem.
Wow.
Okay, further communications from the public. And the proposed agenda format, just to let you know, in future will not have a second opportunity for comment. So this is a rare opportunity. You can be one of the last people to comment at the second comment time, and apparently I'm not selling this well. All right, going
one other comment?
Yes, Mrs. Rao.
Veterans Day is on Saturday this year, but Friday will be with the veterans we'll send out the schedule to everybody, starting at the middle school, then going to Roaring Brook, Pine Grove, Thompson Brook, and then on Monday, that Friday's a half day for the high school for conferences, so they're going to come here for lunch and an assembly on Monday the 13th. So we'll send out the schedule. Any board members that can join us for any part of it are more than welcome to.
Thank you.
It's just been pointed out to me that the change in the agenda still preserves the second communications from the public. There you go. It shows that I may have been something I wanted.
You wanted, yeah. We did.
All right. If I can have a motion to go into executive session.
So moved to for the 3 discuss confidential documents, certification, or collective bargaining, and contracted negotiations.
Correct. And that would be at 8:57. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. We'll give it Mrs. Blea. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Carries unanimously.